Hi everyone, it's Amy Thomas with Catholic Pilgrim. I'm doing this video in my car because I know many of you want answers to your questions, and I just feel like I'm running short on time, and so I am waiting on my kid to come out, and so I thought I'd try to get in this next video. It is raining, so you might hear rain in the background, but I guess that's kind of fitting for the mood of all of this. Okay, so what are we talking about? Like I said yesterday, if you've been following me on social media, you know that I have background in dealing with sexual violence crimes. And so I put out questions for people to ask having to do with the latest information about the sex scandals in the Catholic Church. And so yesterday I did a video on the victims and the questions you guys have had about the victims. Today I want to focus on the offenders. Everybody wants to know, who are these people? Why would they ever do this? Okay, so the questions I got were, how could anyone ever do this? And basically, who are these people? So one thing that we as humans, especially parents, think is that if an offender were in our midst, we would know it immediately by the way that they look. And the truth is that there is no one look to an offender. They don't have a look. You couldn't peg them, just being in your midst. They come from all backgrounds, all races, religions, nationalities, gender, though men are primarily the perpetrators. And so we can't fool ourselves thinking that, oh, I would know if I saw an offender, and I know I would get my kid away from this person. The second thing to know is that if an offender were to attack your child or start molesting your child, it is not most often going to be a stranger. It is going to be someone that you know, someone that has been involved in the family. It could be a family member. It could be a friend of the family. It could be a coach, a teacher, or even a priest. This crime does not have one specific grouping of people that it falls into. So we cannot deceive ourselves into thinking that, well, I would be able to peg them. I study these people. I worked with them, and I can tell you that even I, as a criminologist who specializes in sexual violence, cannot pinpoint and pick out a look or a perfect type of person that I could give you that said, this is the type of person you need to stay away from. So that's kind of scary because, in a way, I wish there was a look. I wish there was something I could tell you guys, hey, if this person looks like this, then keep your kids away. And sadly, that's just not the case. So that means we have to always be vigilant. Always be vigilant. So, which is exhausting. It's just exhausting, and that's just the nature of the world that we live in. And so we just can't let our guards down. Okay, so people want to know, why would anybody do this? How could anybody do this? And I know sexual crimes are just something that are very difficult to get our minds around. How could anybody ever do this to a child or an adolescent or teenager? For most of us, it's beyond our understanding. And we don't even like to think about it. It makes us sick to our stomach, rightfully so, and it should. And so the thing I want to explain is that nobody just wakes up one morning and is like, I'm going to go find a kid to molest. It's usually a process that they go through. And so I worked with and studied juveniles that were offenders. And as I was doing my thesis also, I was researching juvenile offenders. And there was a couple of things that really stood out. Number one, every single kid that was an offender had been a victim. only one of them that I knew of got any kind of therapy. Only one. And it wasn't for very long, and it wasn't ongoing, and I just don't feel like it was effective. So this is a behavior that has been learned, okay? And like I was telling you yesterday with the victims, their bodies become conditioned, especially as children. They become kind of hypersexualized at a point where they are not mature enough to understand what sex is or to be involved with sex. And so this causes a lot of confusion. This causes a lot of secrets being held. And so anyway, all of the offenders that I was studying and all the research I'd done, what it was looking like to me is that we have a lot of previous victims who are now turning offenders. And so that was really disturbing to me, because we were failing these kids somewhere along the way. Okay, we weren't getting them the help. We would maybe remove them from their perpetrators, but then we weren't getting them any kind of help. We were just like, let's not talk about this. It'll go away. And that has not worked out. It's just not worked out. The second thing that really caught my attention, these offenders came from all backgrounds, poor, wealthy, different races, you name it. They came from all backgrounds. Houses with drugs, houses without drugs, houses with mom has a boyfriend, houses with both parents in the home. The second thing that popped out to me was that every single one of the juvenile offenders that I was looking at in the institution that I was in, every single one of them had been introduced to pornography at a very young age. And I'm talking some of them at 2 years old. Either mom's boyfriend was watching it on the couch while these kids were playing amongst them. And so, but every single kid, introduction to pornography at young ages. Okay, so am I saying that every single person who looks at pornography is going to turn into an offender? No. But it is a factor. It is a huge factor because it objectifies the person, it desensitizes us, and I could go into so much more about this. And if you need resources, you need to check out Matt Fradd, start listening to his podcast, Love People Use Things, to get an understanding of pornography and its devastating effects. Pornography is never a good idea, ever. Never. So anyway, what usually happens is these young children are being introduced to pornography. They are becoming victims themselves. They are hypersexualized. They start to view pornography that engages in all pornography is abnormal, but what we would call maybe like abnormal pornography. It gets worse and worse and worse until their appetites are desensitized to maybe like softer porn, and move on to harder and harder and worse pornography. So, and then we're not getting these kids any help. And so what happens is that we see them perpetrating upon other people, and they oftentimes, because nobody gets these kids therapy, kids don't talk and tell parents, they move into adulthood, and this has been a behavior pattern that they have been doing for a very long time without getting caught. So we can do all the background checks in the world, but a lot of times these people don't get caught, and so we're missing them. So how could anybody do this? It's usually years and years of desensitization to oftentimes pornography, being exposed to it as victims themselves, and it becoming kind of a learned behavior that they then act upon because this is what they have learned. This is what their bodies now are used to, have been conditioned to, and so they repeat and act out in the same way. And it's just a vicious cycle. It's not as if just a man one day wakes up and is like, today I feel the urge to go find a child to molest. No, it's been years and years of this going on in their mind at different little by little increments until it gets to the point of molestation, which is devastating. And because it's such a secret sin, such a secret crime, like I said, we're just not getting them help. Okay, so with these priests, many of them I would bet money on have been victims themselves, and I'm not excusing their crimes in any way, shape, or form. I'm just giving you an understanding of what we're dealing with here. That never got help, and not all offenders were abused as victims, and not all offenders looked at pornography, but it is overwhelmingly the case. And so this is just, with sin, it's, the Catholic Church teaches us that, if you let those venial sins go, and we don't cleanse our soul, and we don't get help, and we don't shine a light on that darkness, it moves into mortal sin. And it's kind of like that. I think it's Casting Crowns, the band. It's like a slow fade. It's just a slow fade into mortal sin. And like I said, I'm not excusing what these people do. It's devastating. But we do need to have an understanding of what is going on here, because if we don't understand it, then we cannot fix it. The other thing I want to make clear is that if your child has been abused or molested, that does not mean that they're going to turn into an offender. I don't want any parents freaking out. Just be sure to get them therapy. Be sure to talk with them about it. Be sure to help them understand that this is abnormal behavior and that this is not okay, and no one should ever be engaging in it. Okay? So, the other thing is parents, I'm going to be real serious here. You have got to get your kids off the phones at such young ages. I'm not even playing anymore. I can't even tell you how dangerous it is. Kids are seeing pornography at younger and younger ages, and we are sitting here and we are buying our kids all these electronic devices, giving them to them anywhere and everywhere, in their rooms, sending them off with friends who have electronic devices. They are seeing pornography, people. I'm not playing. It is time to stand up and be a parent and do not get them these devices. My oldest did not get a cell phone until she was 16, started driving. And all through her years, we have been talking to her about pornography. I hear parents all the time, my kid has to have a phone for this and that. Look, I grew up in the 1980s and 1990s. I did not have a cell phone, and here we are. Here we are today, and I am still here. You can do it. You can do it. We are afraid to tell our kids no. I was sitting at the YMCA one day waiting on my daughter to get done with swimming lessons, and there was probably an 11 or 12-year-old boy sitting next to me on his cell phone, just absorbed and totally checked out. And I just happened to look over because he was sitting like right next to me, and he was scrolling through his Instagram or Snapchat, and he was reading something that said how to have sex with a bed. Now, it didn't say the word sex, and I can let you decide and figure out what it actually said. And this boy was reading this, and I was just sick to my stomach, because I'm like, we have got to do a better job as parents, because what happens is these kids are seeing this pornographic stuff on their phones, on their tablets, and they are acting out and perpetrating it upon other kids. It is time to stop being a friend to your kids and step up and be a parent, because kids perpetrate upon kids, and they will act out what they see. I know everybody's going to sit here and tell me that cell phones are absolutely necessary. They are not. They are not. You want to start part of the problem? You get these kids off their cell phones and get them actually outside and engaging, because they are coming into contact with pornography, and then they are perpetrating and acting out what they see on their phones. And I'm dead serious. I'm not even kidding. done with rant. It just makes me so mad that people are just sticking their heads in the sand about this stuff, and then we all go around and wail, what can we do? What can we do? And when people tell them this is what you need to do, they make excuses. Can't make excuses anymore, people. You just cannot make excuses. Okay. So why do people cover this up? Okay, this is a hard one to explain because sexual crimes are just revulsive to us. They're just revolting. I can't even say the word. And so when these crimes happen, many times we just shut down, almost in defensive mode. Now, I have seen this across the board. I have had numerous kids of incest that I have counseled that were being sexually abused by their fathers or their stepdads or their mom's boyfriend. When their counseling sessions, they would tell me that their moms knew about this. Either they walked in on it, they told their parents, told their mothers, whatever. Moms did nothing. They would shut down. They would not talk about it. They would not address the issue for numerous reasons that I'm not going to go into. But it is a defense mechanism because we think that we would know if an abuser was in our life. Like, as a woman, I feel like I would never marry an abuser. I would know, right? I would know. I would never start dating somebody who would start molesting my kids. I am not that kind of person. I would never let that person into my life. And so we just shut down. I had a teenage girl who was raped by her father's best friend. Went to court. He actually took the stand. The perpetrator actually took the stand. I was there in the courtroom with this girl as an advocate. He confessed to the crime. Confessed. Jury found him not guilty. The girl's family was run out of town and had to find a new place to live because people in the town were treating her so badly. So even the courts failed this girl. So this is not, the church has covered this up and done things. It's not specific to the Catholic Church. I have seen it across the boards. I have seen it in the most intimate of relationships, mothers not even dealing with these issues. And the biggest reason is because people do not understand these crimes. There are so many misconceptions, so many misunderstandings. And so they just shut down and they cover it up. They like to rationalize it and think it's not as big a deal as it sounds. They blame the victim because it just is easier to find some excuse, some reason. Well, they must have been doing something. They must have been doing something to cause this. And so this is why it gets covered up, is because people are afraid to talk about this crime. People are afraid to understand this crime. People are afraid that it's going to enter their world. And then when it does, they just can't handle it. They just can't handle it. It's so revolting to us. It's so disgusting and perverse that our brains almost, in a way, in order to protect us from dealing with the truth of the matter, just don't deal with it. And I know that's hard for a lot of us to understand, and I'm giving you a very, as simple as I can explanation of this, but it happens everywhere, because we don't educate people on this. We don't talk about it enough to make it comfortable to talk about. And so then when it happens, we all freak out, run into hiding, hide under a rock, leave the victims helpless, leave the perpetrators not getting punished or any justice happening. It's really just, it's insane. It's just one of those crimes that the general population just can't handle. And it's an embarrassing crime, because if it happens like in the Catholic Church, oh my gosh, what kind of ramifications are going to happen? And so they think by covering it up, maybe it'll be less bad. Maybe, who knows, with the church, maybe they're like, we don't want people leaving the church. Schools do. I mean, people, I have seen it everywhere. Make no mistake, it is everywhere. Okay. I have had to deal with child sex rings that were covered, that were being covered up, that were children were being used for pictures for child pornography. When I was working as an advocate in Florida, there was so much human sex trafficking going on, and when I called about it, because in the area that I was in, I was getting a lot of victims from this crime brought over from other countries. Trying to get with the police on this was, I was basically told if I valued my life to just be quiet about it. And I didn't know what to do. I mean, I'm just little old me. I didn't know what to do. I tried calling this, the national hotline for sex trafficking, and I got nowhere. I got no help. So it's a cover up. The cover-ups happen all the time. So I hope that this is helping you and educating you to help you understand more of what's going on with these crimes. Oftentimes it's covered up because the people who are in hierarchies are in it as well. And that's what I found a lot of times with the police departments, was that the police were engaging in the human sex trafficking trade, and so it needed to be covered up or they would be found out. Just some sick crimes, but we have to start talking about it. We have to start being aware as parents of what our kids are looking at and seeing and who they're engaging with. We cannot deceive ourselves to think that we will know what an offender looks like. We have to realize that most offenders, this has been a learned behavior, and they are acting out what has probably happened to them. So in that way, we need to have a little bit of understanding, not to tolerate the crimes whatsoever, but to understand that somewhere along the line we are failing people in this regard. And mostly because we're unwilling to talk about it, because it is uncomfortable. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. I hope that shed some light on the offenders. If you have any additional questions about that, I hope to answer them. I'm sorry I was harsh there about the phones, but I'm dead serious, guys. Got to be more vigilant. Absolutely. So thank you for listening, and my next video will be on what can we do? How do we protect our kids? And what can we as the church laity do to fix this problem? Till then, take care.